Hi, everybody. Welcome to Commerce Today. So imagine that you had the privilege of joining us at our e-commerce dinner that we held in El Paso just a few days ago. Now you're sitting at this nice restaurant surrounded by e-commerce industry peers, having some great conversation. And somebody stops and says, wait, to you, what exactly is e-commerce anyway? Not probably the question you expected. As you can imagine, there were some pauses, and that was actually a question from our e-commerce dinner. And it really got me thinking. I'm like, what is e-commerce? And what exactly is it? And are we all using that word to mean the same thing? And I think this is going to be a fun episode. Whether you are working in e-commerce, you are in IT or in marketing and kind of just adjacent to e-commerce. But I think even especially if you're selling to e-commerce professionals, this is a good episode for you. So over the next 20 minutes, I want to give you a definition of e-commerce, but also I want to give you a way of looking at each individual business and how it engages in e-commerce in its own unique way. And that, I think, is the real magic of this episode. Again, whether you are selling an e-commerce solution or implementing an e-commerce solution, realizing that each business has its own unique definition of e-commerce and learning how to figure out what that definition is going to be the most important part of today's episode. As always, for everything we're talking about today, if you don't want to try to take notes, if you would like a transcript or a written copy of any of this, just find me on LinkedIn. My name is Joshua Warren of Creativity and of Commerce Today. I have a Creativity Gold background behind my head in my headshot because there's a lot of Joshua ones on LinkedIn. Reach out to me, send me a DM there. Let me know which episode you're referring to. Every once in a while, I get a DM that just says, hey, I want that thing you talked about in the episode. And I have to say, which one? There's 120, 130 episodes. Definitely let me know that you are talking about our wonderful What is E-commerce episode. Diving right in, why does this question matter? And I think the first thing is jargon fog. We love in e-commerce to have our jargon and our acronyms. I've been hearing omnichannel for, goodness, over 15 years now. And I think there's a whole lot of merchants out there that still have no idea what omnichannel actually means. But add to that, we have PIM, OMS, mock, composable, all these different things that honestly, the average e-commerce decision maker within a merchant, they don't even know what half of these phrases mean, or they have a different definition of it than you do. And so there's just so many confusing terms out there that means that when you send somebody an email and you say, hey, I can help you, we have a mock-based solution, they're probably thinking, what, like Mach 3, like the Razor, Mach 2, like the Airspeed, like what is this guy talking about? Also, even within the industry, ask somebody, what do we call Amazon? Is Amazon a marketplace? Are they an e-commerce company? Are they actually primarily a hosting company? So getting these definitions right helps us have such better conversations. And again, even if it's not a sales conversation or an implementation conversation, just when you're talking with your peers about what you are doing within the e-commerce space, maybe trading some tips, making sure that you have these common definitions can make such a difference. Also, getting the words right and having a common foundation and understanding and description of what e-commerce is for your company can really help you prevent misaligned KPIs. And actually just recorded an awesome episode about KPIs. Hopefully you have watched or listened to that one. But one thing we didn't mention in that episode is while you are defining your KPIs, really understanding what e-commerce means to your specific business is so incredibly important. Finally, let's say back in 2010, you picked Digital River because someone said this is a great e-commerce platform. Now you're migrating off of it for actually a few different reasons, unfortunately. But let's say you're migrating off of it just because it wasn't your kind of e-commerce, the kind of e-commerce that you needed and that your business conducted. So let's really peel back the onion, peel back the curtain, peek inside, however you want to call it. And let's look at really how we define e-commerce. And I define e-commerce with 4 verbs. And first, a little bit longer sentence. E-commerce is a digital process that lets 2 parties find, decide, transact, and fulfill value without sharing physical space. Say that again. E-commerce is just this digital thing, really. And I say thing because it can be a system, it can be a process, it can be a marketplace, it can be a lot of things, but it's a digital thing that lets two parties find, decide, transact, and fulfill value without sharing physical space. So find, first verb we're talking about. When I say find as part of e-commerce, where's the thing that I need? That's what people are asking is, I need this thing. I have money to buy it. Where is it? So that's how you look at it from a human layer, from an e-commerce professional layer, and we're not always human, I think. We could call this SEO. We can call this paid ads. We could call this marketplace search. We could call this, what's our category navigation like? But at the core of it, it's really just that human question of, I need something, where is it? The next up, decide. So human question, it's as simple as, imagine you're holding that widget in front of you. You found it, you're holding it, and you're saying, is this right for me? Is this the one that I truly need? Does it fulfill my need? And again, in the e-commerce world, we might start talking about content, about reviews, about contracts. If you're a B2B company, like there's a lot of different things that influence that decision. But really at the end of the day, it's about a person is making a decision. Do I want to buy this product? Transact. So again, human question. How do we seal the deal? How do I actually buy this from you? Is there an online checkout? Do I need to call for a quote? Can I pay you with my Venmo account, with my PayPal account, with my Bitcoin? Do I need to, hopefully not, but sometimes in the B2B world, do I need to mail you a check? So technical layers, this could be about the cart, obviously. Could be about, can I upload a purchase order? It could be about EDI. It could be about punch outs. It could be about subscriptions, payment gateways, credit terms, all this lingo that we love to throw on top of it. But again, at the end of the day, it's just one human asking another human, how can I buy this from you? How do we seal the deal, complete the transaction? And then finally, the last verb behind e-commerce is fulfill. So very simple human question is, how do I get it? How are you going to get this product from where you are or where the product is to where I am or where I want the product to be delivered? And again, e-commerce world, we'll talk about a WMS, we'll talk about a 3PL, we'll talk about curbside pickup, we'll talk about e-invoicing, a lot of different things, but it comes down to this customer wants to know, how is this product going to get from where it currently is to where I need it to be? So when you think about it, a t-shirt business, and sorry, I always pick on those, but t-shirt business selling on Shopify to $100 million company selling really complicated aerospace coatings to any other e-commerce business you can dream of, they are all running this same loop. It is all find, decide, transact, fulfill. You may think, oh no, our product's different. We have a very complicated product, a very complicated buying cycle. But if you actually stop and look at it, you will find you can break it down to find, decide, transact, fulfill. So why does this matter and how does this kind of work for different business models? So first of all, let's look at B2C, so retailers especially. It's really helpful to me if you go through and you actually think about what does find, decide, transact, fulfill look like for that type of business. So again, talking about B2C retailers, find could be ads, it could be influencers. Decide could be very emotional, and it could be about maybe you provide free returns. And so it lowers that threshold to make the decision because the person thinks, oh, if I don't like it, I can return it. Transact, maybe you're using Apple Pay to make it super simple. Fulfill, this lots of times for omni-channel retailers looks like, how do I use my stores so that someone can actually purchase this item and pick it up same day? So next up, direct-to-consumer brands. Now these, a little different from our D2C brands, are going to be a little different from the retailers just because when you're selling, you can own the whole story. You can own the brand experience. And so deciding especially will often lean on a community around the brand. It might lean on a subscription process. It definitely, many times, it'll be about a mission. It's interesting. I've noticed more and more of the larger D2C brands have launched philanthropic arms. If you go all the way back to earlier e-commerce days, Tom Shoes started with the whole idea of you buy a pair, we give a pair away. And that really honestly boosted their sales, created a community. Now I notice, for instance, over at Kendra Scott, they have a whole philanthropic arm and a director of philanthropy so that they can really influence people, honestly, around that decide piece when they're trying to decide, do I want to buy this jewelry from Amazon or do I want to go to Kendra Scott? And if I go to Amazon, I'm putting a little bit more fuel in Jeff Bezos's rockets. If I go to Kendra Scott, then I'm actually helping these philanthropic efforts that they're engaging in. Marketplace sellers. So if you're a marketplace seller, then all of a sudden the platform has all of the control around find and a lot of control around decide. So you really need to overinvest in the, especially fulfillment piece and in making sure that you are fulfilling orders quickly, not only to meet the platform's requirements to continue to win the buy box, but also to provide an experience that keeps those customers coming back to you and not just back to the platform. Finally, B2B distributors, find can look very different. There can be a lot of sales reps and brokers involved. For instance, there could also just be Excel-based quick ordering. Again, the find process can look very different. Decide can be a lot more complicated for B2B buyers. There can be multiple levels of purchasing authority. There could be buying committees, contract pricing. You'll need to provide spec sheets on the product pages. Transact, and again, this will look very different from the B2C side lots of times because you might be offering net terms, you might be offering purchase ordering based purchases, etc. And then even fulfillment. Now you're probably lots of times looking at offering freight options. You're looking at more drop shipping, will call pickups, things like that. Finally, there's hybrid, and those are always really fun. And those are the ones that combine. Lots of times I see this, it'll be combined omni-channel D2C or omni-channel with kind of an old school pure play setup, or it'll be the most common one, B2B, B2C combined. And that's where I feel like this model of find, decide, transact, fulfill really comes into its own, because you can sit down and you can almost segment this out and say, okay, for this segment of our business, these are the priorities for find, these are the ones for decide, these are the ones for transact, these are the ones for fill. Do that for each section. And then you almost, and this is where, sorry, I'm nerding out a little bit. My e-commerce nerdery is showing, but you can almost make a Venn diagram and say, okay, what is the overlap between each of the segments of our business? Our B2B buyers and our B2C customers, where are they the same when it comes to how they find us, and where are they different? And that can really help you decide where to make the biggest investments in your e-commerce business. So it's really important to get this right. If you don't get this right, and when I say get this right, organization-wide, if you don't get your entire company, everyone that touches e-commerce or influences e-commerce, if you don't get them using the same words and understanding e-commerce in the same way, can cause so many problems. Lots of times I'll see IT just call e-commerce the site, and to them, it's just, oh, that's our website. It runs on our server, or it runs on an Amazon server, wherever. Operations, when they hear e-commerce, they may not even think about the e-commerce platform. They may be thinking about the warehouse management system, the WMS, that is tied into the e-commerce platform. Marketing might see, oh, here's our ad campaigns. Here's our email marketing that we're doing for the e-commerce business. And then each area, when they fight for e-commerce budget, they're actually fighting for something totally different. Again, ops could be saying basically, hey, let's spend more money on the WMS, the warehouse management system. Marketing may be saying, hey, we need to spend more on e-commerce. And what they really mean is, let's spend more on the paid ads, or let's spend more on the creative for the marketing content we're creating. So then you get these gray areas where no one's funding it, no one's fighting for it. This is where, say, security patches for your e-commerce platform or conversion rate optimization just get totally missed because no one is thinking about those other areas of the e-commerce process. Also, lots of times, this is where people buy the wrong e-commerce platform. They will buy a platform that is great at that find step maybe, but is terrible at decide, or more than anything else, they may have a very different kind of transact process, and it may be different than your cookie cutter average e-commerce site. They go out there and they sign up for Shopify, and then suddenly they're wondering why no one's completing checkout, because it's not actually providing the payment methods or the payment process or the contracting process that their particular e-commerce buyers need. Also, This could relate to metrics being off. And again, mention the KPI episode from last week. Definitely go back and watch that. But if you don't have a good, solid, common definition of e-commerce, then you're going to end up with these very siloed metrics that are looking at one very small part of your e-commerce business. Or worse, you might have just copied and pasted some metrics out of a blog article that turns out it was really designed for a direct-to-consumer retail business, and you're a very high-ticket, high-average order value B2B business that needs to track your metrics totally differently. Also, I have seen this sadly result in some great e-commerce managers really struggling in their jobs because they were hired by the wrong kind of company. So lots of times people will say, oh, we just need someone to manage our e-commerce website. We need a website manager. Especially if they're the only person in your company that is championing e-commerce, their role is a whole lot more than just managing a website. Their role is really fighting for all four of those verbs, for find, decide, transact, and fulfill, and for being the person that goes between all the different departments that touch those four verbs and make sure they're all marching in the same direction and delighting your customers. And that's a totally different skill set than someone that's going to sit down and update a Shopify website. So be careful. Make sure you think through these terms before you hire your next key e-commerce hire. So a little bit of action plan here. I like to keep Commerce Today very relevant to what you can literally go and do today for your e-commerce business. So find your nearest whiteboard, list those four verbs, and actually list the current people, processes, tools, and pain points under each of those verbs. Just write those out, a little quick brainstorm on the whiteboard. Now go through and actually find each place that you used a very industry specific term. It can be e-commerce industry specific. It could be specific to your vertical and what you're selling. Every single one of them, erase it or cross it out and replace it with a term that a seventh grader would understand. Replace it with the most basic language you can think of exactly what that thing is doing. Now look through this and you're going to see some pretty clear gaps. You're going to see some metrics that maybe aren't right. You're going to see possibly even a platform that's not right. So this is a chance to go through and really say, okay, based on everything on this board, what are our most important metrics to start tracking? What truly matters to our business? Then do a 1-week experiment, find the biggest gap. And once you've whiteboarded all this, find the verb that has the biggest gap and plan whatever sort of quick fix or micro fix you can implement in the next week. So B2B, you might be looking at all this and say, hey, actually on the find step, we don't have a way to upload a CSV file. And we actually have customers that want to upload CSV files, and that's how they're going to find the products and build out their cart. Go enable that feature. D2C, you might be saying, okay, the Transact step, we actually don't have the right upsells there. So we're actually losing money on the Transact step where we could be encouraging people to buy more from us. So find something small, do a 1-week experiment, and let me know how it goes. Also, I would encourage you specifically, drop me a DM, just like a 1-sentence explanation of what your 1-week experiment is. And then a week later, drop me another DM. I'll hold you accountable, make sure you actually do it. Drop me another DM and let me know what the results were. And I would love to then have you come on Commerce Today as a guest, talk about that experiment or about really any topic in the world of e-commerce that you are interested in. So that's it. Find, decide, transact, fulfill. Define what your loop is, what each of those things mean for your business, and then get to optimizing. And hopefully that gives you a better understanding of when I ask, what is e-commerce and what does e-commerce mean to you? I don't mean tell me how to buy something online. What does find, decide, transact, and fulfill look like for your business? Again, if you are not working within an e-commerce business, but you're selling to an e-commerce business, I would also really encourage you, stop using all those acronyms. Stop saying we can boost your e-commerce. Start saying, hey, do people have a hard time finding you? Are people having a hard time deciding if they want to buy from you? Do people get stuck in the transaction process? And how's the order fulfillment going? Break it down to those levels Those are terms that make so much more sense to people, especially people outside of our e-commerce bubble. Makes a lot more sense than saying, "Hey, what's your ROAS?" or "What's your even conversion rate?" So think about that next time you are in some interesting conversations. Again, all of this actually came out of our e-commerce dinner in El Paso. We have some other e-commerce dinners planned. Going to be visiting some very interesting cities over the next few months. My next stop, and I think it's actually the week this episode comes out, so you probably already missed the invitation. But next stop is going to be Austin, and then we'll be moving on from there. So if you want to attend one of our e-commerce dinners, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message, let me know where you are, suggest a restaurant even if you like. And I am starting to compile a list of where we will be going this summer and this fall with these e-commerce dinners. Thanks. And again, you can find me on LinkedIn as Joshua Warren with the Creativity Gold background behind me. And I always love to hear from